Dog, they're my big cousin, my role model. Without dude, tell the truth, I'd be stuck in the bottle trying to get her to take some.
Over with.
Shondell Barnett, the man you about to see here, is from Memphis, but he's accused of helping Justin Johnson evade arrest in another state. He's now facing charges of being an accessory after the fact. How Cornelius Smith had been in custody tied to the carjacking of a white Mercedes.
And it is that same Mercedes officers say was used as the getaway car in young Dolph's murder. We now know that car was stolen from a woman at a gas station in East Memphis.
Yeah, police say they discovered Smith's fingerprints on the car.
As investigators searched for young Dolph's killers, they looked for this white Mercedes. We've now learned it was stolen from a woman at this gas station off Kirby Road a week before the murder. The 22-year-old driver at the time who made the quick stop just after 7:30 at night. The victim told police two men armed with assault rifles came up and demanded the car. One of them hit her in the face with the barrel of the gun. The young woman called her relative as this happened. She didn't immediately give up the car. Eventually, the men got the car keys and drove off. A week later, a picture of the car is broadcast out, believed to be the getaway car in young Dolph's murder. Then, days later, officers discovered it behind an abandoned home in Orangemount.
What's going on, y'all? Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, happy this day. Let's get to the business so I can go eat me some turkey, ham, sweet potato pie, dressing, and some more turkey. Y'all ever seen a naked turkey? I'm gonna send y'all a photo after I make that happen. True love all y'all. Let's get to this right quick. Now, some information just came out that shows Cornelius Smith, and something came back from a few years ago where he was a witness, just as you seen him do in the trial of Justin Johnson straight drop for another unaliving when he was out there collecting cash in the parking lot at a club where around the corner from where you seen where they got the white Mercedes from, Kirby Parkway. Around the corner, it's down the street. So that's just more proof that yeah, he's familiar with that area. And who else stayed over that area was Trayon Ingram, the one that they got arrested for the unaliving of Anita Wilson in Covington once again. So all of this is coming to the light. But more specifically, don't never forget that they got Cornelius under some kind of protection, that he has been moved out of the Shelby County Jail. And I told you I was going to be a 2 or 3 days before I get some feedback. And I did get some feedback. It seems like something coming back from his past because of where he's going. So once they found out this information and the feds start digging into the history of all of this, that's what's going on behind the scene. That's why they gave Govan some football numbers, because he done messed up with the feds, and he denied his plea deal. He rejected his plea deal. So now they moved the trial date back to July 28th, 2025. And tick-tock. A lot of people run out of time if you catch my drill. So we'll see what's gonna happen with Govan, because every day, every 24 hours, yeah, it's a blessing to be alive. If you catch my drift. So when you put in all that work and do all that, and the streets look upside your head, they'll spit you right back. So I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna read y'all this. Just listen to this murder that Cornelius Smith witnessed back in the day, not too long ago, and then told like he's a great teller though, and we'll make sense of that, and I'll break it down after this, after I read this, so it makes sense to y'all. My name is True. Once again, I'm gonna send y'all a photo of a butt naked turkey. I'm talking about a turkey skeleton. I'm talking about no meat. I'm talking about like it was just sitting in the sun, like, yeah. I'm talking about in the desert somewhere, like, boy, the mafioso shit. You know what I'm saying? We're going ham. True. Y'all stay safe. Cornelius Smith testified that the night of January 27, 2008, he was 19 years old back then. He was working at the Fire Ice nightclub in the Winchester Road and Kirby Parkway area of Memphis, taking up money in the parking lot. The victim was a good friend of his and also worked as a security guard inside the club. Smith recalled that on Friday, January 25th, the victim and Cortez Johnson CeeLo were involved in an altercation that ended with the victim putting Johnson in a sleeper hold, rendering him unconscious. After Johnson was revived for a few seconds later, he got on the telephone and started making some phone calls. Johnson then went outside and got into a car that had just pulled up, and he was not allowed back in the club that night. Cornelius Smith testified that Johnson returned to the club on Sunday night, January 27th, along with the defendant, who was driving a dark-colored four-door car, possibly a Nissan Maxima, with tinted windows. Later, between 3 and 4 a.m., the victim agreed to give Cornelius Smith and another man, Matt Gunn, a ride home from the club. After taking Gunn to his house, the victim and Smith were waiting at a traffic light to get on the 385 expressway. While the victim was talking on his cell phone, Smith noticed the car he had seen the defendant driving earlier approach the victim's car on the driver's side. Smith could not see the defendant in the car, but he saw Johnson on the passenger side, hanging out the window with a gun hanging out pointing towards the car. Cornelius Smith tried to grab the victim, but it was too late. They was already firing shots. Smith ducked and prayed that he would not die. He heard 15 or 20 gunshots, glass breaking, and bullets hitting the car. Smith testified that when the shooting stopped and the car pulled away, he shook the victim and, realizing he was dead, put the car in park and called the police. Smith gave the police a description of the shooter's car and told them that Johnson was the shooter. Later that morning, Smith provided a statement to the officers at the police station. Sometime later, officers showed Cornelius Smith a series of photographs of vehicles from which he identified one that looked similar to the car the shooter had been in. Smith said that there were street lights at the intersection where the shooting took place and that he was able to clearly see the car the shooter was in. Lieutenant Donald Crow with the MPD testified that he responded to the scene of the shooting. Lieutenant Crow stated that Cornelius Smith provided him with the shooter's nickname, and he took Smith to the police station where Smith gave a formal statement. Lieutenant Crow identified several photographs of the crime scene. Officer Alpha Hines, a crime scene investigator, testified that she collected evidence. Now, Matt Gunn testified that he was working security at Fire Ice nightclub of January 27th and early morning of January 28th. Gunn was aware that the victim and Cortez Johnson, aka CeeLo, had gotten into an argument 2 nights earlier that ended in the victim putting Johnson in a chokehold until he fell asleep. Gunn recalled that Johnson was furious with the victim and kept on saying he was going to get his ass. Johnson also testified that he had some heaters for that NIGGA's ass, which referred to guns. The morning of January 28th, they closed the club and lit after 4 a.m., and the victim agreed to take Gunn and Cornelius Smith home. The victim dropped Gunn off at his home, and that was the last time Gunn saw the victim alive. Ashley Butler, Cortez Johnson's girlfriend, Ashley Butler, Cortez Johnson's girlfriend at the time of the incident, testified that she dropped Johnson off at the Fire Ice nightclub January 25th around 8 or 9 p.m. He called her to pick him up from the club sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. the morning of January 26th. When she arrived at the club was closed, and Johnson was not there. She went to a gas station, then returned to the club and continued to wait for Johnson. She saw the defendant's car outside the club, and eventually Johnson exited and indicated for her to wait while he walked to the defendant's car. Johnson got into the defendant's car, then returned to the front of the club where he was angrily talking to some people. She noted that Johnson had his hands inside his pockets, and she could see the end of a gun. Johnson then briefly returned to the defendant's car before he got into her car. Johnson no longer had the gun when he got into her car. So that meant he called his homeboy to bring a gun. And it didn't go down at that moment. Butler was aware that Johnson went to the club again 2 nights later. However, it was the defendant who took him that night, which was unusual because she normally drove him. So they knew it was going to go down. Sergeant Murray testified that she first came into the contact with the defendant on January 29th when she walked into the interview room he was in. He recognized her as being the mother of one of his former classmates. In the statement she took from him, the defendant denied being responsible for the victim's death or even knowing who was responsible. However, he acknowledged that Cortez Johnson may have wanted to harm the victim because of a dispute the two had earlier the week of the shooting. The defendant recalled that after Johnson's dispute with the victim, Johnson asked the defendant for a gun, but the defendant did not provide him one. Later that day, CeeLo continued to ask the defendant about a gun, but the defendant told Johnson he could not get one. The defendant said that the night of the shooting, he went with CeeLo to the club where they stayed until 2:30 a.m., then went to a McDonald's near CeeLo's grandmother's house. After staying at McDonald's for 20 or 30 minutes, the defendant dropped CeeLo off at his grandmother's and went home. The defendant claimed to be unaware of CeeLo's whereabouts around 4:30 a.m. and did not see or hear anything from him until around noon when he got a text from CeeLo saying, "I got an effed up situation, call me ASAP." Around 6:30 that evening, Johnson asked the defendant to provide an alibi for him. Officers wrote this 15 bullet fragments were recovered from the car, and 3 of his 4 windows were shot out. All right, Sergeant Mother testified he first came in contact with the defendant after he interviewed CeeLo, and CeeLo gave the defendant's name as one who could provide him an alibi. During the course of being questioned as a witness, the defendant gave Sergeant Mothers a description of his car, which was close enough to the description given by the surviving victims. Sergeant Mothers inquired where the defendant's car was parked and took photographs of it. All right. He assisted in creating a photographic array of similar cars, which was then shown to Cornelius Smith, who identified the defendant's cars. Cornelius been telling good stories on the stand. All right. Sergeant Mothers testified that after the defendant's car was selected by the surviving victim, the defendant was advised of his rights and was questioned as a suspect. When the officer started asking the defendant questions regarding the shoot, he said that he did not want to talk anymore. So the officer left the room to discuss how to proceed. Meanwhile, the mother of his childhood friend, when she passed by, he wanted to speak to her. So they put him on a 48-hour hold in jail. However, the next day, January 30th, he was brought up for additional questioning. Sergeant Mother was aware the defendant had been Mirandized prior to speaking to him. In their conversation, the defendant admitted to the police that he supplied a gun that did work to CeeLo the Friday night of the altercation between CeeLo and the victim, and then told him what happened on the night of the shooting. And when he told him this time, the defendant admitted that the statement he had given the previous day was not entirely truthful. He stated that CeeLo was responsible for the victim's death. He admitted that he provided CeeLo with a gun after CeeLo's altercation with the victim the Friday before the shooting. But he explained that the gun was not working and he got it back from Johnson that night. The defendant stated that he talked to CeeLo on Saturday, the day after the fight, and CeeLo asked him again for a gun, but he ain't given one. The defendant stated that the following night, Sunday, he took CeeLo to the club where they stayed until 2:45. When CeeLo said he was ready to leave, the defendant continued. So this is in his words. So we left the club and went to McDonald's in South Memphis. Left the McDonald's about 3:30 and then arrived at his grandma's house. I ain't see him go in, but he went outside the house and was like, hold up, hold up. I left something at the club and then gave me a 20. So on our way back to the club, he was saying, I better not see this NIGGA. And I was like, who? But he mentioned no name. So as we arrived at the club, CeeLo was like, there the NIGGA go right there. And I was like, who? And he said, the NIGGA I got into it with Friday night. He said, follow him. And I was like, for what? And he was like, just follow him, bro. So we followed him for a short period of time. Then all of a sudden at the red light, CeeLo said, stop. Slow down right here. And I was like, for what? Then all of a sudden I heard several gunshots and sat there for a minute because I was in shock to what was going on and drove off. Took CeeLo to his grandma's house, and on the way to his grandma's house, he was like, I told the NIGGA, I told the NIGGA I was going to get at him. Then I dropped him off and went to the house. In his statement, the defendant claimed that he did not realize CeeLo had a gun until he started popping off. He said that CeeLo contacted him later that day of the shooting and asked that he make up a lie for him. All right, and then let me see. All right, this is just, I'm gonna do this and skip over this, and it's just forensics about the gun, and that's the medical officers. All right, now this is Marlene Walker, the defendant's mother, testified that she woke up around 4 a.m. on January 28 because she had to take one of her sons to the airport. When she walked downstairs, she noticed that the defendant was asleep on the couch. However, did not know what time he got his ass home. The defendant testified he met CeeLo a few months prior to the shooting and they became friends. CeeLo was an event promoter for the club. The defendant recalled that CeeLo called him around 3 a.m. the morning of January 26 because he had gotten into an argument with the victim, a security guard at the club, and wanted a gun. The defendant assumed that CeeLo only wanted to scare someone, so he took his gun, which he kept under his car seat for protection, and met CeeLo at the club. When they arrived, Johnson got into the car and really didn't say nothing. He just said, give me the strap. He knew that his gun did not work, so he just gave it to him. CeeLo got out of the car, walked around like he was waiting on somebody to come out the club, but then he got back in the car and returned the gun. CeeLo then got out of the car with his girlfriend and went to the car with his girlfriend. The defendant said that he talked to Johnson on Saturday and he was still asking about a gun. The defendant knew that his gun didn't work, so he just told CeeLo, I'll see what I can do for you. And he said that the next time he talked to CeeLo the next day, CeeLo called to see if he was going to the club. He said he picked Johnson up at his grandma's house around 11 p.m. and they went to the club. At some point along the way, CeeLo asked for the defendant's car keys so he can get flyers for his next event out of his car. Around 2 or 2:30 a.m., the defendant and CeeLo decided to leave the club. After stopping at a McDonald's, the defendant took CeeLo to his grandmother's house around 3 or 3:30 a.m. and then went home and fell asleep on the couch. He said after he got out for work the next day, Monday, the police called and asked him to come to the police station for questioning. That means Cornelius had already told. He drove his little silver Honda to the police station at 10 a.m. and met with the police, who put him in a room by himself. The police came in the room. Then they asked for his car keys and his phone. However, they never told him why they wanted to talk to him and wanted his keys and the phone. He said He told him where he had parked the car, and the defendant was left in the room by himself. So he gave police, his keys and his phone without even knowing why he there. So I guess they went outside and checked his car 15, 20 minutes later. Took some pictures of it. Saw the mothers informed him that there had been a shooting and that a witness had identified his car. They talking about Cornelius. When they questioned, when he finally asked, "What y'all got me down here for?" the sergeant slammed the papers down and eventually said something about CeeLo, whom he had already admitted knowing. Sergeant Mothers then began slamming pictures down of a dead body and other things, but the defendant denied any involvement. The officer questioned him about 45 minutes to an hour, asked about his relationship with CeeLo, but he had no idea the officers were talking about a murder. He only told that CeeLo was seen shooting out of a car that looked like the defendant's car. After the interview, they showed him a piece of paper, read them rights, asked him if he wanted to keep talking to them, but he said no. The officer did not tell him he could leave, and he was not handcuffed to the chair. He said the defendant testified that while he was sitting in the room, we already went through that. He saw the mother one of his former classmates. He wanted to talk to her because she was familiar face. All right. So the mother, I was told they had learned. So the police told him, we know you gave him the gun to shoot the victim, but the defendant told him that his gun it didn't even work. And then he maintained that he said the officers kept trying to get him to admit he was involved. He finally, eventually admitted to the officers that he had given CeeLo a gun on Friday night. The officers repeatedly told the defendant that he was going to get 50 years. And in essence, badgered him until he was so scared that he made up his story based on pieces of information the officers had relayed to him. That story ended up being his second formal statement. Afterwards, he took the police to go find his little broke gun. After the conclusion of the proof, the jury convicted the defendant of facilitation of first-degree murder as included in count 1 of the indictment, aggravated assault as charged in the second count of the indictment. I'm just going to scroll down here, and so we can go ahead and chop this up and let y'all know what I found out, the reason why I'm pulling this file. So this ain't nothing but all that right there. I'm just scrolling up so y'all can, anybody want slow motion to read it? Here you go. I ain't got all day. So y'all gonna have to just slow it down. Let it go. You can pause and speed it back up. Do whatever you gotta do. Trying to get on to the conversation. Boom, 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 boom. Damn, I'm getting mad now. Okay, there you go. True. Now y'all seeing that right now. The white Mercedes. Notice, make the key points. Trayon Ingram had relatives in some apartments right across the street or side adjacent to that Kroger parking lot where the white Mercedes was carjacked from. That was November the 10th. November the 10th, 2021 is when they got that white Mercedes from the Kroger parking lot, right? Kroger gas station. It was another guy that actually got arrested, but this witness, the victim, did not come to court. The state picked it up, and he's still out free today. Now, it's gonna make sense because the feds and what's going on and what Govan trying to do behind the scenes, the feds already know. That's why they, released them and let them fend for itself. Because Cornelius, like I said, I'm showing y'all something. Cornelius has been through some shit, and I think on this video I'm gonna show him. Yep, he didn't been arrested for 3 years and trying to rob people. He done shot somebody, and all that with a pistol. But he ain't know how to shoot no Draco. But I don't let a flipper man. So to I'm gonna do the point in the next video. Just follow, just pay attention and make sure y'all understand what the Fed's doing and why Cornelius. This is part of it because the penitentiary and the word been put out and now stuff coming back. That means the Fed's linking up a whole lot of stuff. And if y'all don't believe that, they take their time with it. Then you'll be under investigation for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. They already got some sealed indictments going on, and that's why we didn't see everything in the state trial. But if you pay attention behind the scenes and you got people out around like me, everywhere, then you'll get some valuable information that paperwork cannot show, and that's what's going on. So keep your mind on Trayon Ingram. And then in the next video, I'm gonna link that to who the Feds already picked up. And always remember, when they start doing these sweeps, all them sweeps, they came after they took Dolph out the game. That came after, and how convenient. And don't never forget that it was been told to me that when you play an industry game and they illuminate you and initiate you, such as Big Head, well, guess what? You might well say that's when you start working for the Feds to save yourself. You've been under investigation too. And CMG been under investigation too. And the Feds is going after everybody around. Now, God is using his power because he's a money maker for the industry. But that's just like a little bit. Drop it like it hot. Twerk, twerk, twerk. You know what I'm saying? If you're being used, when they're gonna spit your ass out, babe, too. Ain't nobody safe. But then you gotta tell something to save yourself, because we'll make a deal with you. And if your brother, talking about God, if Juke was the, if you want to act like you ain't know nothing, okay, you ain't that insulated. You made some mistakes, and everybody that's still alive is telling on you now. So you got to work for us. Or you got to get your hot brother out the way. You got to get Juke out the way if you want to stay in here. You had to get Dolph out the way too, Big Head, because he's shutting you down. That's exact. Simply put, after you start messing with the powers that be, money, even if they using God for it, and Dolph is independent, you got $2 million for Jay-Z verses, and he teaching people and keeping all this money, and you over here with us, and he's shutting you down, don't play with your B, stunting on you. If we don't get him out the way, Big Head, we're gonna let your ass go back, and you can't mess with Dolph. So what you gonna do? He's shutting you down. You can't do no shows. If you can't do no shows, and the diss song is killing your sales, you got one option, baby. You ain't heard it from me. That's how they play. So we'll break it down in the next video. Let me go and make a skeleton out of this turkey. You gotta love turkey, and it's healthy too. Donate to the channel this Christmas, this day, for old True Results, and Cash App $ True Results #2. I want to feel special. Other than that, stay safe, stay true, stay blessed. And I'm out. One love, y'all.